boys and girls. So today is an exciting day because today we're going to talk about Daniel and the lion's den, which I know many of you already know this story. So I'm going to read it. I'm not going to read it from our Bible. I'm going to read it from a beginner's Bible and sort of a children's version of it so you can understand all the words. Sometimes the Bible has some big words and they're hard to understand. So after Nebuchadnezzar was king, there were a couple other kings, and all of them trusted Daniel just like Nebuchadnezzar did. And all of them relied on him because he was smart and he was wise beyond his years. And they needed him because, first of all, Daniel had God, and God guided everything Daniel did. And even though some of the kings maybe weren't willing to admit that, they knew they needed God. So they needed Daniel because Daniel brought God to them. So they weren't willing to give him up. He was a very important part of their court. So listen to the story of how this came about. Now, I know you know it, but just listen anyway. Darius was the new king of Babylon. He was smart. He picked 120 of the very best people in his kingdom to help him rule. Then he picked 3 of them to be in charge. Daniel was one of these 3 men. King Darius respected Daniel so much, he thought about making him the ruler over the whole kingdom. The other leaders were jealous. They planned to find some fault in Daniel so they could get Daniel in trouble with the king. No matter how they tried, these leaders couldn't find anything bad about Daniel. Daniel was true to the king in all that he did. Also, he was careful and clever and always did everything the very best that he could. The jealous leaders knew there was only one way they could trap Daniel. They knew that nothing on earth would stop him from worshiping the God of Israel. Daniel's enemies thought up a plan. They made a new law for the king to sign. The law said that everyone should pray only to King Darius. Anyone who disobeyed would be thrown in the den of lions. King Darius signed the new law. He was kind of tricked, though. They tricked him. They played into his, what we call the ego, how he thought he was so great and that everyone should worship him. But he wasn't really thinking. He was tricked. The new law made no difference to Daniel. He did what he always did. He kneeled by his open window 3 times a day and prayed to the God of heaven. The jealous leaders rushed to tell the king. They caught him, and they knew they would. King Darius had no choice but to arrest Daniel. The law had to be obeyed. Daniel had to die. The king tried hard, but he couldn't find a way to change the law. See, back then, if the king made a law and he signed it with what they call his signet ring, even the king could not change the law. Even the king. Daniel was sentenced to die by being put into a den of lions. Before Daniel was thrown to the hungry lions, King Darius said to him, "Your God, whom you serve continually, he will deliver you." So King Darius had faith that God would deliver Daniel from the lion's den. The king didn't sleep that night. Very early the next morning, he rushed back to the lion's pit. He was worried about his friend. He was worried about Daniel. King Darius shouted out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Maybe he didn't expect an answer, but Daniel replied. Daniel called out, "O king, my God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths so that they have not hurt me. And also, O king, I have done no wrong before you." King Darius was delighted. He ordered Daniel out of the lion's den. The king knew God had delivered Daniel and that Daniel's enemies were God's enemies. He gave a command, and all those who tricked him into signing the bad law were thrown into the lion's den. The lions ate them. So the lions were hungry. They just didn't eat Daniel because God stopped them. King Darius wanted the world to know that the God of heaven had protected his faithful servant Daniel. The king wrote a letter that commanded everybody to worship the living God, and the king restored Daniel to honor and leadership. So, this is amazing because God works through Daniel to show his might, right? And Daniel lives his life for God. And everyone around him saw that he loved and honored God. And every good thing that happened to him was because of that love for God and that obedience to God. So they worshiped God. The king of a foreign country with foreign gods and foreign idols now worships the God of Israel because Daniel was obedient. And when we're obedient and we follow God, other people see that. And we could bring other people to the Lord just by our actions and just by the way we are. So let that be an encouragement to you to praise God, to obey God, to worship God, to be truthful and faithful. And other people will see that and they will come to know the Lord too. There are other parts of the story of Daniel that we're not going to learn about. There's Daniel with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego get thrown in the fiery furnace because they won't bow down to the king. But there's a fourth person in the furnace. Daniel's not with them. There's a fourth person in that furnace that some scholars believe is Jesus. Some believe is an angel. But whoever it is from God. And he saved them. And they came out of the furnace without even smelling like smoke. So that's pretty amazing. And the whole story of Daniel is pretty amazing. Some of it is very difficult to understand. But when you get older, I'd like you to read it and really try to understand it. I did a Bible study on Daniel once, and it was very interesting, but very hard to follow, even for me. So that's our story for today. I will try to link a video to our Google Classroom on Daniel if you have time and you want to watch it. Just a little cute cartoon. And I will talk to you later. Bye.